Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about soloing over the blues and using a combination of jazz and bebop phrases versus more traditional blues phrases and soloing ideas. So what we get very often if we listen to the hard bop period earlier as well, but really right in there we start hearing it more often, is guitarists and other instrumentalists as well going back and forth between these two styles and contrasting the two by kind of leading one into another. And you can do this over standards. If you listen to Grant Green, he's doing this all the time. But we're going to do it over a blues because it kind of makes the most sense to learn about this over an actual blues progression. So what we're going to end up with is let's start with kind of a definition of what we're talking about by a blues phrase. In jazz, we're dealing with addressing chord changes. We're dealing with creating melodies based off of the melody of the song and off of the chord tones and the chord progression that's happening. So over a B-flat 7 chord, we're playing a major third because it's not a minor 7th chord. So there's a major third in this chord, and that's what you're going to get. In jazz, we're going to play over that third. And I'm speaking very generally about all of this, by the way. Any rules that I'm talking about have been broken many times before, and they're going to be broken many times in the future by all of us. We have to play what sounds good in the end. So when I'm talking about this, don't think it's written in stone. This is just a good starting point. Things to keep in mind. Over a blues progression, in a blues style, if we have B-flat 7, very often you'll hear all the notes coming from the blues scale or the minor pentatonic scale. So instead of addressing that chord with playing the third that belongs in it, if we have like a even though it's a B-flat 7th chord, we end up with the minor third. And we could call that the sharp 9 and kind of try to theoretically, justify it and everything. But really that's what's happening over all the chords. Very often we're just hearing a blues scale. And the melodies are great, lots of good blues solos. Certainly nothing wrong with that. But if we're talking about vocabulary, there are two different kinds of vocabulary. No one is better or worse than the other. When you start combining the two, you get some very interesting ideas because you have two different ways to build melodies, two different ways to build intensity in a solo, and keep things interesting as you're playing through. And they suit each other very well. Blues and jazz are connected. We're playing blues, a jazz blues came from the blues. So of course, having some blues perspective is helpful for us, especially as guitarists as well. Let's just go through some of this. I looped some of these chords. I just looped a chorus of the blues. We could do this with solo guitar, but this is meant as a single note soloing lesson. So assuming that you're playing with a bass player or a pianist or a group or something, or a backing track if you're practicing, and you can take this into solo guitar. It would certainly work, and solo guitar is great. But we hear these examples more often with single note playing. Sorry, I just got a battery warning. Let me turn this off here. I think we'll be okay to finish it. So I'm just going to start the loop, and just keep in mind, try to think about, I'm going to try to be very deliberate about this. This is not going to be like me sitting down at a gig or something and soloing. I'm going to try to force myself back and forth in some sort of regular fashion and keep the phrases pretty simple as well so that you can just kind of hear and guess which one is which, and then we'll talk about it. So, hold on, let me turn this off. So could you hear the difference between the blues and the jazz phrases? I think that if you've been listening to any of these styles for just a little bit of time, I was trying to be pretty deliberate about it. So just to, I don't remember what I played, but just to kind of go back and talk about some of the phrases, there is a gray area between these where you could hear a blues player use a type of phrase and a jazz player. And that's where we get, if we talk about just some guitar specific stuff for a second, if we have our normal minor pentatonic, you can do this in any minor pentatonic shape. You know, normally we talk about 5 pentatonic fingerings. If we're talking about, and blues scale, when I'm saying minor pentatonic, the blues scale is the minor pentatonic scale with just an extra chromatic passing tone, right? So if we have, for minor pentatonic, this, the blues scale is really the same thing with just that extra note added. So the gray area is if you take this minor pentatonic shape, and we know that this note is not the third of B flat 7, right? Because it's the flat third. If we bring that up, and even you can even start on this note and slide up to it, and then play all the other notes the same in the pentatonic scale. I'm just playing a normal, but sliding up the thirds. So that's a gray area, because you will hear blues guitarists addressing chord changes and doing that type of thing. So that can belong to either one. And really it just depends on, in your head, are you thinking of it as a blues or a jazz phrase? And you don't have to think of it as either. You don't have to label all this stuff. But there are some phrases that kind of belong to both styles. Jazz phrases are generally going to happen often on the 2 chord, because that's a chord that doesn't belong in the blues progression if we're talking about a traditional blues. So I'm just thinking back, I don't think I played any blues phrases over the 2 chord. Normally that was traditional jazz playing or bebop lines. The start of the chorus, you know, the 1 chord is a good place to add blues phrases. The chord before every chord change. So if we're talking about the chord progression for a second, we have B flat 7, E flat 7, B flat 7, B flat 7, and then E flat, so 1, 4, 1, 1, and then 4. The chord right before that chord change, so that measure, the 4th bar, is leading us to the 4 chord, right? So if we have the B flat 7, that's the 5 of E flat. So this is leading us to the E flat chord. That's a place where you can fit in altered dominant ideas, and you hear that often where it might be a blues phrase for the beginning of the solo, and then all of a sudden, here, let me start the loop for a second, I'll show you what I mean. So I also tried to do it over before the 2 chord, where you're leading to the next chord with an altered dominant idea. What I did, I think, in the before the 4 chord, altered dominant wise, it's flat 9, sharp 9, and then to the natural third. So that was using both of the 9ths in that case. And I forget what I did before the C chord, but again, that's leading in, so if we have the, actually that might be closer to a blues phrase, so. That's what I was looking for there. So these are places where you're probably going to hear the changes, you know, the changes between styles and phrasing. Not all the time. I'm just trying to think of some sort of method to where you might want to start adding them. And we're talking about the chord before every chord change, using, you know, soloing over the dominant as if it's jazz song. I mean, it is a jazz song. That's why I kind of stumbling over myself there. We're playing jazz, but you know, solo over it as if it's jazz. So we're talking about those two different styles. I think you know what I mean. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. I think me stumbling over my words is a good opportunity to stop here. If you have any questions, let me know. If you'd like some resources, I would have loved to like play some of the songs that use this, but like I got a copyright violation for like one of the songs that I played, and like it wasn't somebody's arrangement, it was just me playing it. And I've heard that if you play recordings, the algorithm or whatever just gets that stuff really quickly, so I didn't want to play any actual music on here. But start with, if anybody, start with Grant Green, because you're going to hear that all over the place, over not just the blues, but all standards and everything else that he plays. So good luck, have fun. If you like this content, please subscribe. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm always happy to help, even if it's not related to this video. I'm always looking for ideas for future videos. I am going to do some more blues-related videos, I think, talking about different kinds of blues, since we have so many to deal with in jazz, and just some other ideas like this. There's that saying I think I mentioned earlier, and so many people have said that if you're really comfortable with blues in 12 keys, and rhythm changes in 12 keys, and you're like really intimately connected with those and you're comfortable with them, then you're going to be able to play over most standards, because the harmonic conventions in those two forms and styles are contained, they have a lot of the building blocks of most other standards that you're going to see. So, all right, have a good one. I hope you have a good evening or a good day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Take care.